In 1898, a group of investors brought a 2-ton machine into Alaska. It was supposed to replace dog teams, haul cargo, and make them a fortune. They fired it up, and it never moved. Not because it broke, because the snow melted beneath it and then froze it solid. And that wasn't a rare mistake. It was the beginning of a pattern. At the height of the gold rush, Alaska had one problem that mattered more than gold itself: movement. You could find gold, but moving supplies, equipment, and people across snow and ice was slow, expensive, and dangerous. Dog teams worked, but they had limits: speed, endurance, and capacity. And where there's a bottleneck, there's money to be made. So engineers and investors started asking a simple question: what if we replaced dogs with machines? What followed wasn't progress in a straight line. It was a series of experiments, each one exposing a different law of physics. The steam sled was one of the first serious attempts. A 10-horsepower boiler powered a rotating drum covered in spikes. The idea was to dig into the ice and create traction. From a mechanical standpoint, it made sense. More contact, more friction, more pull. But they misunderstood the surface they were dealing with. Snow isn't solid. It behaves more like a compressible material. When you apply force, it doesn't push back evenly. It collapses. Now take 2 tons of steel and place it on narrow runners. The pressure becomes enormous. Instead of staying on top, the sled sinks into the snowpack. And then the real problem begins. The boiler generates heat. That heat transfers into the snow beneath the runners. The snow melts just slightly, creating a thin layer of water. But in sub-zero temperatures, that water doesn't stay liquid. It freezes fast. So the sled doesn't just get stuck, it becomes bonded to the surface. In modern terms, you could describe it as a failure of thermal management combined with poor load distribution. At the time, they just called it a machine that wouldn't move. In 1903, James Dawson approached the problem differently. Instead of focusing on traction, he focused on materials. Early steel had a serious limitation. At low temperatures, it lost ductility and became brittle. It could crack under stress without warning. So Dawson used whalebone, a natural composite material, flexible, resilient, capable of maintaining its structure in extreme cold. And in isolation, this was a smart decision, but the system as a whole still failed, because the real limiting factor wasn't the material, it was torque. Engines of that era produced limited rotational force, and deep snow creates massive resistance. Without enough torque, the system cannot overcome that resistance. No matter how good the materials are, the machine didn't fail dramatically, it simply failed quietly. It couldn't generate enough force to move itself forward, which in engineering terms is just as final. By 1909, George Tiffany built a machine that actually managed to move for a short time. Then it overheated. This reveals another constraint. Energy conversion isn't efficient. A large portion of mechanical energy becomes heat. In deep snow, resistance increases load on the engine. More load, more heat. But early cooling systems couldn't keep up. Radiators relied on airflow, and in slow-moving, high-resistance conditions, there wasn't enough airflow to remove heat effectively. So even in freezing temperatures, the engine overheated, a failure caused not by the environment directly, but by the system's inability to interact with it properly. Then came a radical shift in thinking. Instead of fighting the snow, ignore it. In 1916, Scotty Allen built an aero sled powered by a propeller. This changed the entire physics of the system. Thrust was no longer generated through friction with the ground. It came from air displacement. And, even more interesting, the propeller angle created a slight upward force, reducing the normal force on the snow. Less normal force, less friction. For the first time, a machine could glide over the surface instead of digging into it. This was a real breakthrough, but it came with a cost: fuel consumption. High RPM engines require constant energy input, and in remote Alaska, fuel supply chains didn't exist. So, while the machine worked physically, it failed economically. In 1926, engineers introduced one of the most ambitious designs yet: Fordson snow motors. Instead of wheels or tracks, they used rotating screws. The concept comes from the Archimedes screw, a mechanism that converts rotational motion into linear movement through soft materials. On paper, this is ideal for snow, large surface area, continuous propulsion, minimal sinking. From a theoretical standpoint, this was one of the most promising designs, but it failed for a reason that had nothing to do with geometry: lubrication. At 25 degrees, oil behaves differently. Its viscosity increases dramatically. Instead of flowing freely, it resists movement. Inside the engine and drivetrain, this creates internal friction. When operators attempted to start the machines, the required torque exceeded what the system could handle. Components experienced stress beyond their limits, and because steel becomes brittle at low temperatures, those components fractured. The machines didn't just perform poorly, they damaged themselves. After 2 days, the expedition had burned through massive fuel reserves and covered only 65 miles. It wasn't a single failure. It was a cascade of interacting constraints. After decades of increasingly complex designs, a solution finally worked because it was simpler. Stanley Morgan's Alice, front skis, rear tracks. Instead of concentrating force, it distributed it. Instead of maximizing power, it optimized traction. Instead of fighting the environment, it adapted to it. Morgan also addressed thermal behavior. The enclosed cabin retained heat, improving engine performance and reliability. Alice wasn't revolutionary. It was balanced, and that's what made it effective. In extreme environments, the best system isn't the most advanced. It's the most stable. These machines weren't failures because the ideas were bad. They failed because each one misunderstood something fundamental: pressure, heat, friction, energy. In controlled environments, those mistakes might not matter. In Alaska, they become the only thing that matters, and that's the real lesson. Nature doesn't reject innovation, it tests it, and it keeps only what works.